right across Melbourne, including the Nunawading Megastore. Joining me in the studio, because of a book called Pigs at the Trough, Adam Schwab, good afternoon.
Hi Dennis, how are you going?
Yeah, I'm fine. Let's just get you a bit of background on yourself. You're an ex-corporate lawyer.
I am.
Journalist, contributing to things like Crikey and Fairfax. And you've written this book about Pigs at the Trough, which looks at sort of a generation of executives and not always behaving properly.
Very much so. It's a study in corporate governance to an extent, and the problems that built up during the boom before the financial crisis, and that were exposed when the crisis hit and the price of debt went up, and a few of these businesses started to fall over. Some of the errors and the sins and the extraordinary executive pay started to come to the surface. The full extent of it was really brought home to shareholders when the collapse really happened in 08.
See, people can't get their heads around the concept, and I'm one of them, of these extraordinary salaries. And we keep hearing government saying, we're going to crack down on this, we're going to stop this, and even in this last few days, we've heard of other ones. So it will never stop, will it? It's
hard to see it stopping. The biggest problem is the people who own the company, the shareholders, aren't the ones who decide how much the executives are being paid. That's done by the corporate directors. And while the directors are notionally appointed by shareholders, little mum and dad shareholders who own 1,000 shares in Coles or Wesfarmers or Myer or BHP have no real say on how much executives are paid. You buy a share and you hope that the directors will do the right thing and will curb executive pay, and too often it doesn't happen. And in some cases, the executives who are being paid these extraordinary sums are actually on the committee that decides how much everybody gets paid, and that was a pretty common problem, and something that.
But that's for your average person, the people listening right now that go, but that's not right. That shouldn't be like that.
It shouldn't. And the Productivity Commissioner...
Gee, can I try that contract time here? I tell you what, I just think, boss, I want to be on the committee just to see how much I can get. That just doesn't make sense.
It's a very unusual situation, and you look at some of the companies that have that situation. Village Roadshow is one with Graham Burke, the CEO, was on the Remuneration Committee. Leighton Holdings, one of Australia's largest construction companies, has Wal King, a very well-respected CEO, but he's paid about $15-16 million a year, virtually regardless of how Leighton performs.
So that's not based on the performance of what he is CEO for?
Well, Wal King, for example, gets paid based on a percentage of the company's net profit. So if the company performs badly or worse than the previous year, he'll still get a very large sum because the company makes so much profit based on assets that have been contributed by shareholders.
What about something like, a lot of people bought Telstra shares going back away and thought that was just a wonderful thing to do. How was the Sol Trujillo experiment?
I think there aren't many shareholders who would deem the Sol experience to have been a success. On the numbers, when Sol came to Telstra, they were trading at about $5 a share. They're now about $3, about $3.15 or so, depending on the day. So over that time, Telstra lost about 40% of its value, and during that time, Sol Trujillo got paid about $40 million throughout, a lot of which was in short-term cash payments. So Sol gets the cash, the shares go down, and Sol doesn't have to give that cash back. He's got it. That's permanent. So what companies should do is try and align executive pay with performance. So if you give a CEO shares in the company, if the company share price goes down, the value of that remuneration also goes down. Because
I suppose they would argue that sometimes these things will go down not because of me, but because of world circumstance.
They certainly would, but then I guess you hear very few executives argue when the shares go up that they shouldn't get those options.
If anyone has a question, I'm talking to Adam Schwab about the book Pigs at the Trough. 9690 693. You're happy to answer questions?
Of course, yes.
There might be something that's in someone's, like a thorn in their side that they've been thinking about in this area for a long, long time. 9690 693 or 13 13 32. What about with people who have built businesses, the ABC Learning Centres, for instance?
The ABC situation, which which we cover pretty well in the book. Everybody's heard of ABC, but not necessarily because it was a especially big company, but more because of how it affected the community. It looks after hundreds of thousands of Australian children, people whose parents are working and have no other option but to place children in childcare often. And the problem with ABC is it got an enormous amount of money from the government. About half its revenue, which is around $1 billion, came from the taxpayer. So the problem was when ABC collapsed, which it did, the taxpayer was on the hook. So taxpayers got hit initially, and then the company collapsed, and they got hit again. And the problem with ABC, Eddie wasn't paid a lot of money, nothing like Sol Trujillo or Phil Green at Babcock and Brown. Eddie's pay was actually quite low. However, ABC had an enormous amount of what's called related party transactions. Mm-hmm. So Eddie...
family.
Yeah, exactly right. The most well-known one is Eddie had a contract, ABC had a contract with a company called Queensland Maintenance Services, and it was back in 04, 05, it got around $70 million from ABC, which wouldn't have been such a problem. It wasn't tendered out. $1,000 a year, which is a very good salary, but relative to some other CEOs, he wasn't that highly paid. It was more the transactions he did between himself and his family. And another one is the Brisbane Bullets were sponsored by ABC, and Eddie owned the Brisbane Bullets, so that was a $150,000 sponsorship that went to Eddie's own basketball team from the company he ran. So there was a myriad of related party dealings that a normal investor wouldn't be happy with if it was their own money.
Joan, your question for Adam?
Adam, I wonder if you could tell me what's happened with the Timbercorp bonds. They were due to be paid on the 31st of March, a Class B bond. Can you tell me what's going on?
Unfortunately, I'm not over the specific. I can get back to you on that later, but the Timbercorp story and the Great Southern story is one which was a massive debacle because that hit not only investors but also grower investors, which are people who invest in the schemes, which possibly sounds like what you were one of as well.
Are you one of those, Joan?
Yes, I had an investment for 5 years, which was due today.
These were all very popular at one point, weren't they?
They were, and the big selling point for these investments is they were pushed by financial planners who themselves received a very tiny little commission. But these investments, the biggest problem with Timbercorp and Great Southern is the actual scheme, so that the timber or the olives or whatever they were growing weren't necessarily profitable. So while you got the tax deduction up front, at the end of the day, investors need a return as well. And to date, there's been very poor returns, and they're just starting to come in now. Obviously, the caller now is expecting a return, and there's been a few in the past year, and there'll be more coming. And there's a big question mark on whether there will be returns, and it's under receivers and administrators are all involved there. So there's a lot of parties who are sort of fighting over a corpse that unfortunately isn't really enough to go around. And it's certainly the shareholders and also the grower investors who are really going to be hurt by the Timbercorp and Great Southern collapses. And
would an investor actually know that they would in good faith believe that it would be a profitable thing that they're investing in? They
were certainly given. No investor's ever going to get an ironclad promise, but you look at the product disclosure statements, and the financial plans were saying, we expect around a 5 to 10% return, which is a solid return, and you get your tax deduction up front, which can be worth a lot. So they were given a lot of, whether it be assurances or promises, they were told a lot of things that certainly haven't turned out to be true, and a lot more detail in the book. But some of what happened at Great Southern Plantations, which is similar to Timbercorp, was very almost outrageous. What went on there.
And if anyone wants to find out more, and it's a great insight into what has been going on, hopefully books like this might put the reins on, and that's probably what you want to achieve as well, is that the general public is far more informed of exactly what has gone on and what does go on.
There's a lot that happens behind closed doors, and that gets revealed in the deep fine print that a lot of the investing public don't get a chance to see. So hopefully it can open some eyes and just prevent future investors from losing money.
Well, that great quote that's that people who forget history are doomed to repeat it. So we all need to know a little bit about this, and Pigs at the Trough helps keep us in the loop. Adam, great to talk to you, and thanks for coming into 3AW.
Thanks, Dennis. Great to be here.
It's called Pigs at the Trough by Adam Schwab. After the